So, hello again. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to chat with you guys today and do this webinar. Um, it's some information that I'm going to share with you that I know some of you are probably familiar with. Maybe some of you are very familiar with it, and for others of you, I think it's brand new. And the topic is change, and I mean that I speak about that broadly, but as you know, I work with a lot of people who have specific habits or specific worries, including anxiety or thought patterns or really specific things they want to change. Everything we're going to talk about kind of hits everything. So it's deep stuff. And really what we're going to talk about is how people tend to go about change in ways that don't really serve us, in ways that leave us frustrated and disappointed. And even asking, is change possible? I know we've all heard that. I hear people out on the streets, maybe not literally, but, people in the world saying, oh, I don't even know if change is possible. And change is so possible, but we have a lot of misunderstanding. When I say we, I mean the human race. So everyone, it's innocent, but we don't really understand how change works well and how to go about it. And that's because we don't really understand how our mind works and how our experience works. As a lot of you probably know, I wrote a book called Little Book of Big Change just about a year ago, a little over a year ago. It came out, and it's been really interesting year. It's been a really great experience. I wrote this book because I had some experience with change myself that I wanted to share. And I had an 8-year binge eating habit that I was so stuck in. I mean, talk about change. I did every change attempt you can imagine, plus a bunch, and nothing was helping. And in fact, a lot of it was kind of making it a little worse, or at least making me feel bad. Let me put it that way, making me feel worse and more hopeless and more scared as I tried all these things and I still had my habit. And I came across this understanding of how our mind works, how our brain works, how bigger human life works in a sense, and was really blessed. And this is not everyone's experience, but in my case, I was really, really blessed to just see something that just changed it for me. And it was relatively easy and relatively fast compared to what I had been doing. And my habit just sort of fell away. So I got curious about that, studied it, saw that, wow, now I kind of see a little bit about that habit, how that happened. I want to share this with the world. So I wrote this book, Little Book of Big Change, and it's really done well. And I didn't write it. I'm not like a big, I want to sell this many copies and do all this. I didn't have a lot of those goals around it. I wanted something to give my clients. I wanted to share my story, like I said. And it's really cool to see how well it's done. It's not a household name or anything like that, but it is a bestseller in Italy. It's in a few languages now, and it kind of has like a little cult following, I think, because I hear people wanting to place bulk orders and giving it to their friends and family. It has like really, really nice reviews on Amazon that just blow me away. And so it's like the people, again, it's not this huge sensation, but the people that have found it really, really seem to have been helped by it. So I love that. And it is about this different way of change that it's just so fascinating to see, and that it's helpful in so many areas of life across the board. So I talk about binge eating a lot because that was my most recent habit. But I mean, it's helped people with the specific things, the gambling, shopping, smoking, drinking, drugs, binge eating. And it's so many people have said, wow, it helps me. It's helped with my anxiety. It's helped with my depression. It's helped me see my parenting habits in a different way so I can be a more patient parent. It's somebody just said it's helped them see their chronic pain and deal with their chronic pain in a new way. So it's really awesome to see that, again, it is a universal sort of thing. So this webinar in particular, I want to tell you just a really brief background of this because it's kind of a cool story, came about I was at a conference in October in Los Angeles, and I was talking to this really nice guy from Mexico. We were talking about my book and the no willpower approach, which is the subtitle. So how people change without hard work and willpower and all of that. And he said, there's a day, one of these kind of fake holidays. There's this day in January that they've dubbed International Ditch Your New Year's Resolutions Day. And I just thought that was awesome because, and he gets this understanding as well. So we said, of course there is, right? Like we all know that. We all know intuitively that, these, and it's not just New Year's resolutions, but anything we say, okay, this is it. That was my last binge. This is my last cigarette. I'm never going to do that again. Or we set these resolutions so well-meaning. It's so well-meaning. We just want to change. And it looks like the more oomph we bring to it, the more commitment, the more resolve, the more massive action. We hear all these things, the better it's going to go. So that's what we do, right? But then we also all intuitively know that most of the time, for a lot of people, those things just don't stick. They don't translate into deep, permanent, lasting change the way that we wish they would. And therefore, you have people on the street saying, is change even possible? So it makes so much sense. So we laughed about it, and I thought that I have to do something with that because I totally get why that doesn't happen. And my book is sort of the answer to that problem, Ditch Your Resolutions. And so I said, do you know when the day is? I'm standing there at the conference. We Googled it, and it was January 17th, which also, as some of you said, happens to be my birthday. So that felt extra kind of destined, like, yes, this is my topic. This is my thing. I'm going to do a free webinar, and I'm going to share it with as many people as I can and really look at that. So happy International Ditch Your New Year's Resolutions Day to all of you. And hopefully it's a holiday that you're not celebrating. But after some of this information, hopefully it's a holiday that you won't ever celebrate in the future. But you think about it, so we're 17 days into the year, 2.5 weeks into the year. And that's, of course, this is not a scientific study, but 2.5 weeks is about how long we can work at it. And when I say work at it, whatever it is, it's about how much effort we have. It's about how much willpower we have. And then what happens? And then we get frustrated, and then it gets really hard, or life happens and we can't stick to our plan, So it really begs the question, first of all, to kind of get us into this discussion of why change attempts last 2.5 weeks. Why is it that we have about 17 days in us before things start to go south? And then, and even when they don't after 17 days, why is it that the change just doesn't seem to stick in the right way? So you think about how most people go about change. Most people I know go about change, myself included, for a really long time, with behavior, right? We have these behavioral plans and these behavioral fixes. If there's something you want to change, if you want to stop procrastinating, this is one I've been hearing a lot lately. You want to stop procrastinating, what are you going to do? Well, maybe you make a plan to sit down and focus for this much time before you take a break. Or what I hear a lot of people doing is using all these outside resources, which I'm not saying is a horrible idea. We're just kind of looking at what the average person would do to make change happen. You might put these apps on your computer that they have now, where I don't really know how they work, but they block off Facebook during certain hours, or they come up and tell you, they give you some kind of warning if you're like surfing around too long, or there's all kinds of patches, band-aids, fixes, things that'll come up and punch you in the face, all kinds of things we can do. People used to, in the old days, used to wear these band-aids that they'd flick if they did their habit, or not band-aids, rubber bands that they'd flick when they do their habit. All kinds of little gadgets and things like that we can use and that people do to try to help ourselves change. So in all of this, we're looking at behavior. We're saying, what do I do? Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm not going to do. Here's what my action is going to look like, right? This is like the first thing. This is the way we do change is we go right to the behavior. And again, I mean this sort of in general, but even when we go a bit deeper, even when we know our thinking is the problem, or there's like a mindset thing, we'll say, well, how do I need to change my mindset? How should I think in order to stop procrastinating? Maybe I need to visualize myself as a productive person. Maybe I need to say some mantras. Maybe I need to, so even when we go a bit deeper to the thoughts and feelings, it's still a change attempt. There's still a lot of action and a lot of here's what I'm going to do. So that's procrastination is one example. Of course, if you're trying to get healthier, most people will sit down and figure out, okay, how am I going to eat? How much am I going to exercise? If you want better relationships, you say, okay, we're going to have 2 date nights this month, or I'm going to call my friends this many times, it's all about that massive action. That's the way that most people go about change. So I'm going to show you a picture. I hope this works. I'm going to just share my screen for a second here. So I can't see your chat, but if you can see this, if you can see this, you know what it is. If you can't see it, it's an iceberg. So I think about change in this kind of iceberg model of change. What most people do when we come up with all these behavioral plans and strategies and patches and apps and all of these things we're going to use to help us change, we're at that tip of the iceberg. So that tip of the iceberg, as you can see in this picture, and as you know, is a tiny portion of it. I think it's about 10% most of the time, maybe even less. That's the part we see. So it makes perfect sense that's the part that the average person, just not thinking much about, I'm going to stop sharing, not thinking much about how our mind works, the psychology, any of that. We just know we want change. We go right to the part we can see, which is our behavior. If I want to stop procrastinating, I got to do stuff. If I want to be closer with my husband, we need to spend time together. So we go right to that behavior, and then we try to force the change. And it's that tip of the iceberg. It's kind of like, I always get this image of somebody out there with a chisel saying, I'm going to move this iceberg, darn it, I'm going to make it happen. And they're just pounding away at the tip of the iceberg with a chisel. That's kind of how it feels, at least it did for me all those years, when I was trying to change by coming up with a behavioral plan or strategy. It felt like I was standing on the tip of an iceberg. All I see is what's right in front of me, and that is big enough as it is. But I'm just determined. I'm using willpower, I'm using muscle, I'm using every ounce of effort that I have, and I'm just going to chip away at the iceberg, and hopefully that's going to make a dent in it. And eventually, if I work hard enough, and if I'm persistent enough, and all of that good stuff, eventually I can make that go away. That's kind of the thinking. Is that chat and let me know if that feels like it's resonating, if that is the way that you're seeing people go about change, or that you've ever gone about change, because I know it definitely was for me. And you can start to get a feel for, man, well, no wonder it only lasts 17 days. I mean, you should get a medal if you make it 17 days. If you're beating it at the tip of the iceberg, if you're going at it in that really hard, outside in, top down, focusing on the part we see and using effort kind of way. It's just effort and willpower and all of those, they're exhaustible resources. We only have so much of them. And the thing is, it's not just that it's hard. So this is important too, to see. It's not just that it's hard, because we're all willing to do hard stuff. I know, especially anyone who's really struggling with something or has a bad habit or addiction, you'll do hard stuff, no question. You don't even care about hard. You just give it to me. If it's going to work, I'll do it, right? So it's not just that it's hard. It's not that I'm trying to give you like, oh, here's the easy way. Here's how you make change by laying on your couch. It isn't anything like that. It's that it's not only hard, it's superficial. It's surface level. It's not deep change. So even if you're on the tip of that iceberg and you're beating away at the iceberg and you're making some progress, you're standing on 10% of the iceberg, or the part you can see is 10% of the iceberg. There's a huge foundation under there that you aren't seeing in that moment, that's not getting moved, that's not getting chipped away at. And that's really how it is with our change. So if I decide I'm going to go to the gym every single day in January, and I do that, I might see some results. I mean, probably you would, right? I might even, those results might even go a little bit deeper, and they might kind of help me see, wow, I'm stronger than I thought. I can do this, you know? I mean, all kinds of good stuff can happen from chipping away at the top of the iceberg. So it's not like it's a horrible thing. It's just that you aren't seeing anything differently. You essentially have blinders on, and you're just going about life with action, with massive action. And you're kind of hoping for the best. and sometimes it does lead to change. You know, again, it leads to short-term change for sure, but sometimes it helps you even kind of, like I was saying, have an insight or see things in a deeper way. And sometimes that change lasts. But more often than not, it really doesn't. And then we get tired out after 17 days or so, and then it just leaves us feeling frustrated and hopeless and feeling like, wow, well, I don't know how to change because I did everything I thought I knew to do and it didn't work. Let's look at a different way of going about change. What do we want to do instead? Well, if you want to, let's go back to our iceberg. I won't show the picture again because it's kind of, frankly, it's kind of confusing for me to get out and show you that picture. I'm a little worried pressing all these buttons. So imagine that big blue ocean with that iceberg where 90% of it at least was submerged underwater. If you in real life wanted to melt an iceberg, what it takes to melt an iceberg is for the water temperature to rise. Even just a little rise in that water temperature, and the foundation, things start to change. The foundation starts to shift. The iceberg starts to melt a little bit. And as soon as the foundation, the big bulk of that iceberg, the part that's hidden to the human eye that we don't know is there unless we're looking underneath, as soon as that starts to shift and change, the tip is going to fall. So that tip you've been pounding away at with all your hard work and all that massive action, it's going to crumble on its own when the temperature of that water raises, even just a little bit. But that's how an iceberg can shift and things can change in a huge way, really different from that top-down, outside-in, beat-on-it way. You know, it happens from the bottom up. It happens more organically, and it happens from the foundation. And when that happens, there's a big shift in that iceberg. So we're not talking about superficial change. We're not talking about maybe like you got the top a little smoother or you got a little, chunk out over here. We're talking about deep, lasting, sustainable change. So the equivalent in human beings of raising the water temperature a couple degrees is, I guess we could say, like raising our consciousness a couple degrees. And raising our consciousness a couple degrees comes from seeing things differently. So when we see how we work, we as human beings, all of us, not you or you or you, but every human on earth ever, when we see kind of what's available to us in terms of change, when we see how we operate, and when we see the truth about our habits in a new way, and our problems, these things we want to change, when we see them in a different way, then we have a sea change. So many metaphors here, so much water. Then we have this true sea change. So then you as a human being, it's like your water temperature has risen. You see life in a different way. And when we see life and we see ourselves and we see our habits in a different way, we do differently. We behave differently, but the behavior comes after the fact. The behavior changes effortlessly or easily. We say it that way, relatively easily, once we see things differently. But until we see things differently, all we're left with is top-down beating on the top of the iceberg. So think about in change, how often, we don't often see this because we're so caught up in change is hard and it doesn't work for me and all of that. Is change even possible? But think about how often in life problems do tend to kind of change almost on their own. Think about things like for yourself that have changed. Maybe habits you've had, maybe ways of thinking, ways of seeing things, that without going to work to try to change it, without applying any kind of behavioral fix, how things have just shifted. Change happens all the time. And change is natural and completely effortless. So we're all changing all the time. The problem is we aren't really changing, like the things that we want to change, like I want to quit smoking. Those things feel like they're much harder to change because we're trying really hard usually to change them, or we're hating them. We're focusing so much attention on, I hate the fact that I smoke. I hate that I smoke is a horrible habit. We're thinking so much about all that the change either feels or really truly is very, very difficult. But then other things, like how you maybe start a new job and at first, you don't get it. And then naturally, just by being around it, it kind of clicks and it comes together and you get it. Things like that. That's big change that you didn't have to stress about. You didn't have to make happen. And it happens. And even with other things, really, people outgrow habits all the time, habits they don't care much about. Now, I'm not saying just don't worry about your problems, you'll outgrow them. That's not at all what I'm saying, but I'm only making this point to kind of help you see that change is natural, effortless, and human. It is in our design to change. We're always evolving. We're always seeing things differently. It's when we pick out a problem, have a ton of thinking about that problem. I hate that I binge eat. It's so disgusting. What's wrong with me? This is all about me, me, me. That it tends to feel really hard. We kind of hold it in place innocently with our focus, with our thinking, with how we're seeing the whole thing. So change is a natural process for all human beings. And when we see how we work, like I was saying, we get that bottom of the iceberg, that foundational shift that makes change much easier. So let's look for a minute at what we can see, like what helps human beings to see that, okay, like if we aren't going to do the massive action, chiseling the top method, we want this to be deep change, sustainable, lasting, and hopefully not quite that effortful, but not quite that hard. If we want that kind of change, what is it that we can see that helps that along? So here's where this gets good. And in some of this, again, if you're newer to this, some of what I'm going to share, your mind is going to find a million exceptions with it. It might sound way too simple. You're going to tell me, or you're going to tell yourself, your mind's going to say, no, that won't work for my habit. All kinds of stuff is going to come up. And I just want to say, I'm not psychic. I can predict that already because I'm a human too. And that's just how every mind works. So listen to the next portion of this with an eye toward letting it be really simple and seeing, okay, maybe it is that simple. Maybe I don't have to argue with it in my mind or kind of figure it out. And just for this next half hour or so, just kind of assume that I'm right. And again, this isn't about me. These are universal truths I'm sharing, but assume that what I'm sharing with you is the truth, because that will put you in a very different place than coming to this saying, I'm going to try this lady out and see what she has to say, but I don't know. Don't know if I'm buying it. Again, there's a good chance I used to come to everything, every book I read, everything with that mindset, and I didn't get much. So just for your sake, just kind of let this wash over you and just say, maybe it could be that simple. Maybe she is, pointing to something that's really true. So one of the things one of the distinctions that's really been really, really helpful for myself and a lot of my clients in experiencing deep and lasting change is seeing, like I was saying, how part of the human design is that we're designed to evolve and change. It is innate in us. We can learn to kind of work with that natural flow that's natural and alive in all of us. And even for those of us who feel like we haven't changed in years, or maybe people tell you that, like, oh, you never change, or like you have that sense of not changing your mind very easily or whatever. Still, change at a deeper level and a deeper truth. Change is natural to you, it's effortless, and it's always kind of wanting to happen. So at that part of us, that part that we all share, we are really healthy, we're really resilient, and we have no habits. So pretty much whatever your habit is, I can pretty much guarantee that you weren't born with it. Even people who feel like they were born anxious, or they've been anxious from the time they were very little or things like that, we learned it. We weren't born with it. It's not that default and fundamental. Anything that becomes sort of a problem for us or that lives in that conditioned, habitual kind of place, we pick that up. That's part of our psychology. So the distinction is kind of between who we really are, like what's true of us out of the gate, out of the womb, like what's just there, the settings, the factory default settings that are true. That is who we are even now today, no matter how old you are, who you are today, and our psychology. And our psychology is the stuff that we think, that we feel, that we do. It's our habits, right? Our habits are part of our psychology. So is what we call our personality, our preferences, our opinions, our any kind of addiction, habit, any kind of thing like that. That's in the realm of psychology. And that's very different than who you are and what's just kind of natural to you. So who we are, who you are, is habit-free, resilient, having everything you need. And your habit comes from your thinking. So you've heard this a million times, but the best way to describe this is by describing the sky. You are the blue sky. The sky does not care what weather shows up. There's a blue sky and it's always blue. And I get that that's an illusion, but just bear with me. The sky always looks blue somewhere, right? It's expansive. The sun is there. You can't always see it, and you can't always see the blue in the sky, but it's always there. And then there's weather. And the weather can be anything from cute little fluffy clouds to a tornado or a hurricane or whatever you might get. And the weather comes through and it does what it does and it creates a big mess and everybody stares at the weather. That's what we see. That's when you look at the sky right now, all I see is solid gray. I can't see any blue sky outside of my window. It's just solid gray. But that's weather. That's weather, and that's not going to last forever. It's an experience. It comes, it's big, and then it moves out, and a new experience comes in. It'll be big, and then it'll move out. Over and over and over for all of human life. For us, for our entire lives, that's what happens. We have an experience. It's in us. It's in our heads. It's a thought brought to life. We have feelings. We have emotions. We have physical sensations. We have cravings. We have all kinds of stuff. It's brought to life in this amazingly real, crazy real kind of way. And then it changes. And then we have a new experience. And we see that. So that's the psychology, but we start thinking we are that. We get really caught up in that because it's in your face. I mean, it's right there. It feels huge. So that's our experience, that's our psychology, but the part we don't always see, so that's kind of the tip of the iceberg, to keep with that metaphor too. The part we don't see, the bottom of that iceberg, and for us, the part we don't see is the blue sky. The blue sky part of us is like, oh yeah, there's a clarity here. There's a habit-freeness here. There's resilience here. I'm designed to change and to let that weather just flawlessly move through me and for me to be okay and not be affected. Because think about it, the sky doesn't care what kind of weather. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think it cares, but the sky isn't affected by the weather. There's no matter how violent the tornado is, it's not going to make the sky, the actual sky, any different. The sky's just the sky. It's just the container. And the weather just comes through and does what it does. So a lot of nature and weather for you here today. But to start to tie this back into us and our habits, the thing we can start to see is, oh, I'm habit-free. I might have had binge eating issues for 8 years, and they took up a lot of my life, but they weren't there all the time. And they were weather. They were thoughts that would come up, that would bring feelings with them, that would bring a whole full-on experience every single time that felt horrible to me. But then it would go. The thing is, I misunderstood it. And most of us misunderstand it. When it was there and it was so big, my mind was going to, oh no, not this again. It's got me. I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do. I have to binge eat to make this feeling go away. What the heck is wrong with me? And why is this still here? This is always here. I have some major personality flaw. Like there's a serious problem with me. Everything about it, like when the thoughts, go binge eat and the feelings and all that would come up, it was like my understanding of that was like I just freaked out. Basically, it's a technical term. I took it so seriously and I took it so personally, and I acted as if it was stable, and I acted as if it had something to do with me, and it was a major problem. It was nothing but bad. So as you kind of get this weather metaphor and like see how this works, what I could have seen, what I see now, and what people kind of wake up to now with their habits is, yeah, it's a habitual weather pattern, but it's a thought. It comes from thought. It's in us. It's in our experience, in our heads only. It's not the world doing this to us. And it's not that you have a habit living within you, like a living, breathing little monster in you that's trying to get you. It certainly can feel that way, I know, but that's not the way it works. The way it works is that you're clear and healthy and habit-free and resilient and have everything you need, and you're constantly experiencing your own thinking brought to life. Sometimes when you have a habit, a lot of that thinking is going to be about that habit. So you get all these thoughts about binge eating or shopping or gambling or whatever your thing is, procrastinating. You get all these thoughts about it, and they're really brought to life, and you feel it, and you go through all that stuff. And if you don't know better, you confuse your psychology with you. You think, oh, this is me. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, I have to do something about this. Our thinking focuses on how it feels and all of that, and makes it feel horrible, so much worse than it's just sensations. It's just feelings. We all have feelings all the time. But our thinking comes in and is like, oh no, it's this horrible feeling again. You can't handle this, and before we know it, that's what we're experiencing, because that's what our thinking is telling us. So we get so caught up in it, and then we act on it, and then it gets stronger, because that's just the way a brain works. What you act on and what you pay attention to and what you fear grows. So congratulations, you have a perfectly healthy working brain. That's just the way a brain works, but we don't understand that. See, I didn't understand that, and I thought, oh, now it's getting worse, and that monster's growing, So part of what we can see that helps the base of that iceberg shift, so that you're like, oh, I don't even see life the same way anymore. I don't see myself or my habit or anything the same way anymore, is that you don't have a habit. You are habit free. And that part of you might feel like that's, universe is away. It is right there within you. It is right beneath all that thinking, all that weather. Your habit is a habitual, internally created experience, just coming from your brain. It's just the machine of your brain doing what it's been taught to do, just firing off in its habitual way. And the only problem, it's not that this happens, that's not the problem. The only problem is that we don't understand it. We're innocent. We get caught up in it. We take it personally. We think it's us. We think there's something wrong with us, blah, 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 blah. And so we end up acting on it. We don't realize that our experience changes on its own 100% of the time, just like the weather does. So to jump on the top of that iceberg and start beating at it is like going outside and trying to change the weather. Why? Like that, like our experience, it moves on its own. And the more we start to get a feel for that, the more comfortable it gets. Like we naturally start to just allow that to happen. And this is a tough thing to explain. I don't even know exactly how that comes to be. I just know that from a place where you feel really controlled by your thoughts and feelings, to hear, oh, they come and they go on their own and there's nothing you have to do. I know, trust me, I worked with 40 people a week for the past year. I know that's like, that doesn't fly. They're like, no, 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 no. I'm not going to just sit here and feel this. Thank you very much. I need something to do. Like, I need to help this along. And I get it. From this place where we're up in our heads and everything feels so real and big, it's exactly how it feels. But the more we start to see these truths, that's when you get your sea change. You start to see, oh, maybe it's not, maybe my mind is making it as bad as it feels. And then you ease off a little, or you relax a little, or however that goes. One day you're like, okay, I can do this. And maybe you hang out with it a little longer. And then it gets easier. And then it gets easier. So I don't know, like it goes how it goes. And I don't want to get into that too much, but just for sake of time. But trust me, like as you start to see how this works a little more and see that weather moves out on its own, everything we feel settles down completely naturally, because that's the design of human beings. That's how we're designed. Just like if you raise the temperature of the ocean, the iceberg's going to start to melt. As we see this, as we see our true design and how we work more and more, our problems are less sticky. We get less caught up in stuff, and we start to experience life in so much of an easier way. We just start to thrive more the way that we're designed to. So one other quick thing I wanted to say about our habit that most people don't get, I certainly never saw this, is that our habit is kind of the solution rather than the problem. So part of why I think we misunderstand how it works, and we dive into this massive action and we use lots of effort and willpower to make our behavior change, because the behavior is the enemy. And I get it. From one way of looking at it, the behavior could be really damaging your health or your life. It truly is. But we look at that behavior only, that tip that we can see, we focus there and we call that the problem, and we just beat it into submission best we can for 17 days until we get tired. What we want to kind of see instead is that behavior is not the enemy. When I would binge eat, I went from a place of maybe, let's say, being kind of at home base, where I was just in life feeling okay, to some thinking starts up. Maybe I'd see a commercial for something that I used to binge eat on. Maybe I'd catch a glimpse of myself and like my reflection and thought I looked horrible, and my mind would get all flooded with all these horrible thoughts. Whatever it was, it would kind of start up. And it was just my own thinking. There was nothing real happening, just my own thinking. But anyone who has a habit knows, right? Like you kind of have that craving, and sometimes it starts, sometimes it goes quick, sometimes it lingers for days, and it can just kind of feel like that. All it is thought. It's nothing but your mind telling stories. We get caught up in those stories. Every human does at times. It's okay. But all that is your mind starting to tell stories. So when that happens, because we innocently, because again, we don't get this about our thinking. We take our thinking seriously. We think our experience, like when a storm rolls through, I mean, we seriously take cover and we take it so personally. Why is it raining on me? And it's all about us, and it feels so personal. We don't see that this is just human life. It rains on everyone. We all experience this, and it's okay. It's going to rain on you. You're not going to like it, and then it's going to end. So we're kind of missing that big picture. So we get really caught up in it. It feels really bad because we're caught up in it and we're making it personal, and it's getting worse because we're paying so much attention to it, making it personal, that of course I was going to go eat a bunch of ice cream. That made me feel better for a minute. The thinking was telling me too, oh, here's something to do. This will make you feel better. You feel horrible right now. Why don't you go eat this? Why don't you go do that? Why don't you go to the casino? Why don't you go buy this? Get online, whatever it is your habit is. It's in a weird way, it's your mind trying to help you. Now, your mind's the one creating the problem. It's not even your mind creating the problem, really. The problem is in the misunderstanding. Experience is just there, and we innocently misunderstand it. So your mind is like, ice cream helped last time. you know, glass of wine helped last time. Some new shoes helped last time. That takes the edge off. And so we do it. That's all we can see. We're just trying to feel better. So I think that's another big insight around this. I just kind of wanted to share that the habit, the thing we're trying to beat into submission with all that effort that doesn't work, is truly a solution. And when we see that, people have huge insights about that. Like, wow, now I see that when my habit starts, when my mind starts thinking, hey, why don't you eat something, or why don't you buy something, or whatever, you can start to see, oh, my mind's just getting really caught up. I'm not at my nice home base place. I'm experiencing some weather. Okay, I know what to do about that. I don't have to do anything about that. I know what that is. Weather's safe. I might not like it, and that's okay. We're not going to like all of life, but it's still going to leave you alone at some point. 100% of the time, no one has ever in the history of the universe been stuck in an experience forever. Ever, ever, ever. You couldn't make it happen. If I paid you $1 million to think of nothing but white elephants for the next 24 hours, you couldn't do it. We can't make that happen. It's so innate and so natural that things flow through us that we're going to be free. We just have to know how this works. And then we don't jump in the middle of it and do stuff to make it go away quicker, because that just always makes it a bigger problem in the end. The iceberg, the way that we all go about change by just finding the right behavioral strategy, that resonates with everyone, I'm pretty sure. We get that, and we can see how that is not only hard, but it just isn't deep. It just keeps us at a level where we're just running on a treadmill, like doing the right behaviors, but not seeing anything new or different. And so what I'm describing, what leads to this deep and sustainable change that you just have for the rest of your life because you see life differently, is that we start to see how our experience works. That's what gives us that freedom. And then you can't unsee it once you've seen it. But I get that everything I shared, especially in this kind of second half, it's big stuff. It's very simple. It's almost too simple, but it's big stuff that took me, a long time of conversations and looking at it to get. So I hope that this just, at least, especially if you're brand new to this, gives you kind of a new way of thinking of change, or starts to get you interested in what's beneath the ocean, what's beneath the part we can see of life. Because there's a lot under there. There's a lot more to life than what our little human physical eyes can see. A lot more. And that's where it gets good. It's really understanding how that works and seeing how much good there is and how much we have going for us naturally that we just miss because we're looking at the problem. A wide variety of resources that will walk you through this understanding from the beginning and really help you kind of have some insight so that you have a sea change, so you see life differently. And then there are going to be portions of it that are a community where you can have contact with me, with other people that are getting this understanding, and really kind of come together. I'm so excited. It's going to be really awesome. I've been wanting this for so long, a one-stop shop to kind of, a place to send people where people from all over the world, really, from all kinds of different ways of thinking, can come and see this, get a glimpse of these truths, and find their habits, falling away like I did, or just find things in their lives getting easier. So anyway, it's called The Little School of Big Change. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to this. And I really hope that it helps you see change in a new way. Any kind of change that you're making, and just maybe even life in a new way. That would be really awesome too. I look for some information about the Little School of Big Change, and I would love to see all of you guys there in the spring if it feels like a fit for you. And also just reach out to me personally anytime. If there's anything I can help you with or direction I can point you in, just shoot me an email, and I'm happy to talk with you. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you soon. Thank you.